Greetings, JarxesTheChill here. Welcome to the first episode of Random Talk. As promised, my first topic will be Marvel. Um, yeah, this first episode will be very, very, very geeky, as I really love Marvel. Um, Marvel is in itself very nostalgic to me. Being that I read a lot of Marvel comics when I was growing up, and pretty much Marvel has basically impacted my life since I was a very young kid. So Marvel basically started out as timely publications in 1939. It's a real long time Marvel has been active. But the name Marvel itself wasn't changed until 1961, and that was also pretty much when Marvel launched the Fantastic Four for the first time. It was basically a reboot or a reimagining of old failed comics. Like the Human Torch was basically another hero on a totally different comic book, but eventually Stan Lee created the Fantastic Four. When somebody immediately thinks about Marvel, one person who you immediately think of is, of course, Stan Lee, our Lord and Savior. Stan Lee has basically made a ton of himself. He has basically made a ton of heroes in the Marvel universe. Some consisting of some of those are Spider-Man, Iron Man. He made the original X-Men lineup. He also wrote Hulk, Daredevil, and oddly enough, he also created the Punisher. One of my most fondest memories of Marvel is basically Spider-Man. I've read most of Spider-Man's run. I haven't read any of the newer, the current Spider-Man issues. I've read a ton of the old ones, from the first one with I think that was I think his first appearance was in Amazing Stories or something, Amazing Adventures, which was anthology comic book series, kind of like a lot of different superheroes started with, a comic book that had different stories. Like if I think Superman started out in Action Comics, which also was like different stories in one comic book. And also in the first Spider-Man issue, I think he has a guest appearance with the Fantastic Four, if I'm not mistaken, because he battles. I think he stops a bank heist, which is robbed by I think it was Chameleon or something, and I think he helps out. I think he's basically just there, and suddenly Fantastic Four show up. It's been a while since I read the first issue, so I may be thinking, I may be wrong on this one, but yeah, I am. If I remember correctly, the latest I've come in the Amazing Spider-Man run, I think it was long after Norman Osborn's reveal as the Green Goblin. That was also around the same time when Steve Ditko left, stopped working for making Amazing Spider-Man. Because Steve Ditko was a writer. He was no, I think he wasn't. He was the art. Yeah, that's true. Stan Lee was the writer, and Steve Ditko was the artist. And he left when they decided to reveal the identity of Norman Osborn. And after that, some art changes changed in the Amazing Spider-Man, but it still holds up. For a lot of people, Amazing Spider-Man was like it was in its prime when Steve Ditko was still involved. But I don't know. I really liked the different encounters that occurred after Steve Ditko left, because I mean, Hobgoblin, that happened long after Green Goblin, and Hobgoblin was a very interesting Spider-Man villain. Yeah, I remember some key moments of the Amazing Spider-Man, but I really haven't. I don't remember all of it, and I don't quite remember when I stopped reading the Amazing Spider-Man. But another comic book I've read most of recently is The Punisher, which is one of my favorite Marvel characters. I don't know, there's something very appealing of me that the Punisher is just a tough, normal guy who somehow gets the job done. I mean, even though he kills people, he still gets the job done. But I guess Punisher is more an anti-hero, similar to Wolverine. But I don't know. I mean, it's good that some heroes have a moral. Like Spider-Man, from what I can tell, does not kill people. Captain America, on the other hand, kills if he absolutely needs to, since he's a soldier, and soldiers are trained to kill in a sort of way. And that's sort of the same thing with the Punisher, as the Punisher being a Vietnam War veteran, and his wife and daughter got killed in a crossfire with two rival gang members, two rival mafia families, I think it was, while they were at a picnic, and after that, Frank Castle decided to declare his war on crime and start his whole war journal. Sorry. And he also has help from a sidekick, or not a sidekick in the sort of the Batman Robin sense, but more like his name is Microchip, and he helps him with his like technology, his gear, and he provides information for him, and he's basically his arms dealer and his information broker in one. Basically Spider-Man and Punisher are probably my fondest Marvel characters of them all. Spider-Man because I can mostly relate to him, and Punisher just because he's just so badass. but when it comes to pretty unique characters, or not unique in that sort of sense, but another character I've become quite fond of lately is Star-Lord from Guardians of the Galaxy. Um, I really haven't read that much of Guardians of the Galaxy. From what I can tell, it's actually a really old comic book, or a comic run, but the original Guardians lineup isn't the same that is today. The only from in the movie standards, the only character who appeared in the original Guardians of the Galaxy was Yondu. He was one of the yeah. I think maybe they had a reference to the old lineup in the second Guardians of the Galaxy movie, but I'm not sure. But basically, after watching Guardians of the Galaxy, I've become quite fond of Star-Lord, just because how an asshole and quirky he is. He's kind of like, to me, he's kind of like the Nathan Drake in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He's like very an asshole, but he usually has someone back when needs to. But yeah, Star-Lord is basically my favorite character from the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And when it comes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's possibly the best thing I've seen in a whole while. Nerd alert, by the way, but I mean, that pleasure you get from nerding and binging all the Marvel movies, like they all fit together, and that's also another thing I really love in the comic books, that it's just a whole huge universe where different characters can have crossovers, and it's like this whole colorful superhero universe where like suddenly there are a lot of alternate timelines, and I think this could be said for any comic book publishers, but to me Marvel has its own unique feel to it that I don't really get from other publishers. Like, I mean, I read a bunch of DC stuff. I mean, I'm a big Batman fan, but a lot of the other stuff I find really boring. I don't find Superman or Green Lantern or any other very known DC superheroes so interesting. But when it comes to Marvel, I'm really fond of most of what they have to offer. Like Marvel has really good underground heroes that aren't that well known. Like, I mean, you have, like, take the Guardians of the Galaxy side of the, like, in Marvel Comics you like have different sides. You have like the other dimensions. You have like the galactic heroes, and you have like the Earth heroes, and then you have like different alternate realities, and you have like, I mean, there are different sides and aspects that happen in the whole Marvel universe. I mean, yeah, take Galactus for example. He's a giant he's a gigantic entity that just devours and eats planets, and Silver Surfer is like a herald of Galactus, I believe. So yeah. And then when it comes to like the galactic side of Marvel, you have like Nova. Nova is a very huge renowned Marvel character, which I think yeah, I think there was a reference to it in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. I'm sure I'm sure it's called Nova Prime or something. I'm not quite sure on that one. I mean, like, I didn't really know there was such a huge different sides to Marvel. I just thought it was like superheroes and beating up bad guys, but then you learn like there's this whole, like, Thanos. Take Thanos for example. He's like a real huge villain that has like this powerful glove, and he becomes basically the most invulnerable, invincible character ever, and oh yeah. Although a lot of this I really haven't read. I only know a bit by backstories. So yeah, like there are a lot of characters I really haven't read that much about. For instance, Nova, I mentioned, I really haven't read about. Silver Surfer, I read a bit about, but not that much. Like I don't really know the origin story of Silver Surfer. Even though I don't read that much of the different comic books. I still like to. I still find it interesting to see read some crossovers and stuff like that. I'm not really. I love reading comic books, but there are some that are a bit hard to get in, mostly because they are a bit hard to start reading into, or they are written in a sort of weird way, like there are some comics I really had a hard time to start reading, mostly because take Four for instance. I found it really hard to start reading Four, mostly because it was mostly it felt mostly like I was forcing myself through it. But I mean, if I read it today, I might have I might enjoy it. But after I tried reading it for the first time, I still haven't touched it yet. So yeah, I mean. Also, the comic I have most memory of is actually a Daredevil comic, and that was one of the comics I read very early in my childhood. It was I don't remember what issue it was called, but it was Daredevil going against Bullseye, and that comic stuck to me for some reason, and I think that issue there was what started me reading comics in the first place. Or also Marvel in general. But just thinking back how far back different Marvel characters go. I mean, Captain America is possibly one of Marvel's oldest superheroes, and it didn't even start out with Marvel. It started out with a different company, publisher. I don't quite remember what the name was, but it was, yeah. It could be. Maybe that was time. Well, maybe that was part of Timely Publications. I'm not sure. But anyways, they all the old comic book heroes have basically had new reincarnations and had modern revivals. and I've noticed that's pretty common in mostly any comic book. I mean, I think take for instance DC too. I think they completely renewed their whole comic book runs, because they just started out all over again in a more modern setting or whatnot. But yeah, and I'm pretty sure they did the same with Marvel. Um, um, Speaking of Captain America, right now he's. I haven't read Strange Empire yet, but from what I can tell, he's a part of Hydra now. Like, I think he got brainwashed or something. I'm not quite sure about this one, but that one looks very interesting. So I really want to start reading that. I've heard a lot of good stuff about that, and there were a lot of new comics too, comic book runs that I really want to read into. Um, yeah. But from again, what I was telling earlier, I may going all over the place now, but this is kind of what goes in my head when I think about Marvel, because it's just this fun joyride that just makes me all joyful. I mean, it's Marvel. I mean, like, um, yeah, it's like this whole huge universe, and I get to witness every single thing about it. It's like, take the whole MCU, for example. I mean, it's just one of the most fun, pleasant things ever to watch everything in chronological order, from Captain America, the first Avenger, until the Captain America Civil War, because yeah, or beyond that. I mean, like, they like recreated the whole comic book feel in movies. Basically, that's what MCU really stands out in contrast to other movie franchises. Like, I don't mean to sham or anything, but I really don't get that same feeling from DC. But I still watch the movies, but it's just I don't get as much enjoyment out of them as I do with Marvel. Also, cause how all the TV shows, all the Netflix shows fit together, and like there's this whole movie universe that has worked for 10 years, and next year we finally will witness Avengers, and then it's a 10-year anniversary since it all started with Iron Man. So it will be 2018 will be such a big deal for Marvel fans. And from all the movies I've seen, I've been quite satisfied so far. I mean, Iron Man. No, sorry, not Iron Man, but 4 and 4-2 were probably the weakest ones of all the MCU movies, but I still got enjoyment out of them. And I still haven't seen Homecoming yet, but I saw Guardians of the Galaxy 2 recently, and that movie was one fun roller coaster ride. I tell you, I mean, it was like throughout the whole movie I was sitting like this I was like having this nerd joy all inside, and it was the best fun ever. The first one was much better, I have to agree, but it was, I got so satisfied of that movie, and all the I mean, yeah, all the different shows too. I also recently saw The Defenders, and that was so kick-ass and awesome. And I even liked Iron Fist, because I don't, yeah, I can see how some didn't really like the actor who played Danny Rand, but I thought he did a good job. But I have to agree though. I have to say he got quite better in Defenders. So hopefully, season 2 of Iron Fist will be much better. Also looking very much forward to the future Marvel movies. As I said, Avengers, Infinity Wars, is that what it's called? It will be such a blowout. I mean, watching that in the cinema, I'm really looking forward to, because I remember watching the first Avengers movie in the cinema, and that whole one of the best memories I have of that movie is the whole pan out scene when they finally assemble in the the battle for New York, and Hulk has that has that reveal where he's always constantly angry, and it's just the feels I got in the cinema was possibly the best thing I could ever gotten out of a movie, and that was possibly my introduction to. It was not the introduction to Marvel Cinematic Universe. No, it was not. But I just when I watched it, it gave me a realization that, wow, this is so great. It will only be better, and it did, and it's still being better. It's still getting better. I mean, come November, I finally have a TV show of my favorite favorite Marvel character, the Punisher. He did a very good job in Daredevil season 2, and I'm looking very much forward to having his own run now. That will be so great. And also, Inhumans is also coming in November, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is starting again in January, I believe, and for Ragnarok is also not that far around the corner, and holy hell, it will be so great. I mean, I think the MCU also has planned like 4 or 3 years in advance. Like, they've planned out movies until 2020 and 2021. So it's just we're like in this golden age of superhero movies, and it's just so fun to sit in the middle of that. And yeah, I don't think I think I've said mostly what I feel about Marvel, and I just always go around thinking like, wow, Marvel really has existed so long, and it's such a huge concept and thing, and it just shows how much an impact it gives to so many people. I mean, like games are being made, movies are being made, and just incredible to know that all that comes from comic books. Yeah, that was my nerdiness going around again. But when it comes to Marvel, make mine Marvel, as Stan Lee says. Oh, another thing. I really love villains. Villains are probably one of my most favorite things of any media, like movies, comic books, you name it. Villains are what keep me interested in a story. Like Fantastic Four has Doctor Doom, Captain America's Red Skull, Thor as Loki, Spider-Man as a handful of villains like Vulture or Green Goblin or Venom, but Venom has more steered steered to a more hero-like thing than a villain, I'd say, because didn't like Flash Thompson become like didn't Flash Thompson like get the symbiote suit onto him, and then he became like Agent Venom or something. I think that was a thing. Um, yeah, and like Iron Man has like Mandarin, and like also you have like these evil organizations in Marvel, like Hydra and AIM, and you have Mr. Sinister, who is like this awful, this badass X-Men Deadpool villain. And I'm positive he's a villain for a lot of other people, but I think he's mainly an X-Men Deadpool character. I think Fox has the rights to Mr. Sinister. But anyways, it's just then again, it shows how big Marvel is. I could go all day telling how big Marvel is. Marvel to me is the greatest thing ever. Again, sorry for nerding, but that's what I constantly do when I talk about Marvel. And it's good that my first episode goes out in a bang and being super nerdy. Yeah. When it comes to villains, I guess my favorite villain has to be. There are a lot of good, well-written villains, but I think the only villain that really counts is Doctor Doom. I mean, this Doctor Doom is like, he's more smarter than Reed Richards. He's a better sorcerer than Stephen Strange, and he controls his own country, and I think he's much richer than Tony Stark, I believe. And interesting theory though, interesting thing though is I think Stan Lee wrote Doctor Doom as as a dictator, cause I think it was something where wanting to rule the world isn't really a crime, so he kind of like has diplomatic immunity, so something like that. But it's very interesting. But from what I've heard, Stan Lee has written a lot of has created a lot of characters with like I think he made up most of the Bruce Banner Hulk things because it sounded smart, but it worked out in the end though. So creds to Stan Lee for making all these great characters. Yeah, I've pretty much said everything I wanted to say about Marvel. So I think we can call this an end for now for this episode. I may go back. I may go back to this topic later. Like I could do an in-depth review of different movies of different characters. Who knows? I could yeah. Like now I just wanted to basically discuss my thoughts on Marvel and why I basically love Marvel and why and how it's my most favorite thing in my daily life. And basically why I love pop culture so much. I really haven't thought about a next topic. So I'm thinking I want to do something history related. but something more modern. So, what if we like? Next topic. Let's talk about Black Sabbath. How about that? Let's talk about Black Sabbath. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Random Talk, and I hope I'll see you next time.